electricity. So, people that need to go left, people with generators and a planned state. So I don't think it's that big of a problem unless the forecast is wrong and we get a Category 3 or something.
Yeah, we may very well get a Category 3, but we certainly anticipate a strong 2 or a weak 3. It's really the same thing. It doesn't matter what the number is. We are going to deal with 100-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts here, no question about it, and a storm surge perhaps as high as 10 feet. And this time, it could be worse on the bay side. We're just going to have to wait and see. Right now, it's the ocean side that needs to get ready for the first round of surge down toward the Keys. Well, let's go north of Key West and northwest of Key Largo, where I am. Mike Bettis has been standing by here in Naples Bay. And Mike, tell us about the elevation that you're at there and what you're expecting for storm surge there in Naples.
Surge is going to be a real big problem, we think, here, Jim. Probably the biggest concern for Naples, especially in those evacuation zones. Some of the highest points are just 5 feet. If we get a water level rise that exceeds that, many of the roadways, many of the homes are going to be underwater. It could be a disastrous scene. And also keep in mind that Naples basically sandwiched in between the Gulf and Naples Bay, so we could get it from both sides. And that is a worst-case scenario for us here. But the folks here in Naples, they've been watching this storm for days. They've boarded up. In many cases, they've evacuated. But I think tonight, especially with Wilma looming just off the coast, it is safe to say that Naples is a city on edge. Naples residents are putting the finishing touches on preparations before heading to safer ground. What would normally be a bustling shopping district is all but deserted today. Marilyn Jans has lived in Naples for 35 years. She owns a jewelry store just blocks from the beach.
It's pretty scary to think that, everything that you've worked for all your life is in jeopardy. And we just finished faux painting and painting everything. And, it's really bad timing.
As worried as Marilyn is about her store, she's even more concerned about her home.
My home probably won't make it if there's a big surge, because it's only 4 blocks from the beach and it's on a canal. And during Hurricane Donna, there was, 4 feet of water in it.
While some anticipate a worst-case scenario, others have no fear.
All is well in Naples.
To your shoulder.
Look, there's Jim Cantori.
Molly French works at the Cheeky Hut. She's made plenty of new hurricane friends, but she's ready to leave too.
Actually, we're packing up the bar, taking all the liquor up, moving all the plants out, and just totally vacating the thing. We think we're going to be flooded out. Yes. This scared everybody to death, so they're gone. Everybody's gone, boarded up and gone.
And I think it is a very safe bet that many people have left Collier County and heeded the evacuation warnings and headed especially northbound to safer and drier ground. Plenty of rain expected with Wilma, and we've had way too much here in the month of October and actually all year here in Naples. Let's bring you up to date on some of the statistics. We've had over 7 inches of rain just through the first 3 weeks of October. That puts us at a surplus of over 4 inches. For the season, for fall, we're at a surplus of about 1.5 inches. And for the year, we've picked up 54.5 inches of rain. That puts us at a surplus of almost 7 inches. So the last thing we want to see here in Naples is heavy rainfall. Unfortunately, that could be exactly what we see with Wilma. So our threat here looks to be threefold. We're looking for surge, we're looking for flooding rain, and we're also looking for significant wind damage with wind gusts over 100 miles an hour. Curfew goes into effect at 10 o'clock sharp. At that point, if you live in an evacuation zone and you need assistance, emergency responders will not be able to respond to your call. That is the latest here from Naples. Let's head now down toward Miami. Meteorologist Jeff Morrow is there. And Jeff, I have to imagine that a lot of anxious people there in South Beach tonight.
Yeah, there are a few, Mike, but a lot of people are saying, hey, we've seen it all before. We had Andrew come through here. This year we had Rita and Katrina when they were more minor hurricanes than the majors they became. So, they're saying, okay, well, I guess we'll get through this one as well. Nobody appears to be evacuating at this point, although there are mandatory evacuations for anybody that lives in a mobile home, both here in Miami and Miami-Dade as well. When we got here late this afternoon, as we came across the Tamiami Trail, across the Everglades and came into the city, a lot of folks were gassing up, and this was the scene along the beach areas. Again, a lot of folks out on the beach watching the waves and just kind of milling around a little bit. And the wind started to pick up here a little bit. Of course, the beach cleared out as the sun went down, but I think it's going to be a lot different scene as the sun comes up tomorrow morning. And we talked to one lady, she's of Cuban descent, and again, she says she has seen it all before.
Right now, I'm going to make a mojito, and then I'm going to make a Cuban meal, and we're going to wait for Wilma. We are ready, we have the shutters up and everything, so we'll see what happens. I was telling him that when Andrew came, the afternoon before Andrew was exactly like this. It was beautiful. So who knows what's going to happen? We have to be prepared. But we're from Cuba. We have experience with hurricanes.
And indeed, they have had a lot of experience with hurricanes, as I mentioned, even this year with both Rita and Katrina coming through here and doing some damage. Now, you can get a lot of rain, obviously, from one of these systems, and particularly if they're a slow mover. We go back to Irene back a few years, and Miami picked up almost 11 inches of rain from that. A place called Cooper City, just north of Miami, picking up about 15 and a half, and Homestead, Florida, south of here, almost picking up 15 inches of rain. We're not expecting that kind of rain out of this system, as it is going to be moving extremely quickly through the area. So probably flooding rain's not the major issue. We may get some storm surge off the Atlantic, but I think the winds are going to be probably the major issue, and they're going to go well up over hurricane force here, maybe even close to 80, 90, 95 miles an hour. So, Jim, calm before the storm here, but it is coming.
No question about it, Jeff. And I'll tell you, they've got, because of only 20% of the people leaving tonight in the Keys, so there are a refuge of last resort situation that's starting to take place here. In other words, there are areas that they're asking people to go if it's only a last resort situation. I mean, these are going to be manned by officers, if you will, and officials, but, they're not going to have food and supplies and everything there. So it's not going to be a full shelter here. We're talking about the Key West High School, Sugarloaf School, the Stanley Switchlick School, the elementary school there, the Shores High School, and also the Marriott in Key Largo here. So those are refuge of last resort places that you can go if you'll feel unsafe in your home. And certainly if you live in a mobile home, you should have evacuated today, and you should feel unsafe if you haven't evacuated here. A curfew also going into place, we just heard now, in Key West from 10 p.m. tonight to 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and there's a voluntary curfew for the rest of the Keys. They want people out of the bars and in their homes. Conditions are deteriorating rapidly now in the lower Keys. Alexandra, back to you.
Jim, are you surprised by the low number of people that have evacuated?
Normally I would be, but having been around these people for a few days, I'm really not. This is a very free-spirited bunch down here, and I think that they pretty much do what they want to do, and if they're going to leave, they're going to do it on their own accord, not because someone tells them to do so.
Gotcha. I hear you loud and clear. All right, thank you very much. Jim Cantori, live from the Keys tonight. We'll get back to Jim in 1/2 hour. But first, some severe weather. Tornado warnings being spawned around as well. Let's go over to Paul with the latest on that.
That's right, Alexandra. Anytime you have a tropical system getting close to making landfall, we have the risk of tornadoes. In fact, we can zoom in. We do have a tornado watch up for much of South Florida through 1 a.m. local time. If we can get this right Sky Tracker up, Sky Tracker 2, we can show you. We do have a watch across the area. And again, just north of the Palm Bay area, we do have a tornado warning right now in Brevard County. This expires at 9:45 local time. And we've already had at least 3 reports of tornadoes with this same cell. So again, it's nights, usually when you have tornadoes with tropical systems, and they're wrapped in rain, they're difficult to see. So if you're under a tornado warning, like here in northern Brevard County, take shelter immediately. And again, the eye of Hurricane Wilma continues to slowly approach South Florida. So expect, again, the risk of tornadoes to continue throughout the night and also most of your Monday as well. Alexandra?
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Well, let's take you back there. As the hurricane speeds up, the preparations have also sped up across South Florida. ABC's Eric Hong joins us now live from Fort Myers. Eric, I'm sure the mood has changed since yesterday, but within the last hour, conditions have really rapidly changed, haven't they?
They have, Alexandra. We're probably getting wind gusts right now of about 15 miles per hour. That's double what we were seeing maybe about an hour and a half ago. Still relatively calm, though we're also getting some off and on rain. We've been reporting, as you know, that conditions are really expected to take a dive later tonight.
With Wilma poised to make landfall tomorrow,
Floridians are making 11th hour preparations.
A little bit aggravated. It takes so long to get here.
The Red Cross turned this hockey arena into a shelter capable of housing 7,000 people. Even if the electricity goes out, the ice rink will keep everyone cool.
The accommodations here are very nice.
Walter Killian relies on oxygen for a respiratory condition, but he and his wife say this shelter was their best option.
If you head up, you can't even get a hotel room in the state of Florida right now.
Despite evacuation orders for coastal communities, many are choosing to stay. At this beach, the fish were biting for Shane Sopp. He and his girlfriend hope they get lucky with the storm, too.
Yeah, it's not worth traveling in the gas, and it's not worth the hassle.
Wilma has already claimed at least 16 lives in the Caribbean and Mexico. Though the storm has weakened over the last couple days, it remains fierce.
All I can tell the people in the Keys that are going to ride this one out, one of these days your luck's going to run out.
A storm could make landfall at dawn around the same time as high tide, adding to fears about storm surge flooding. In Fort Myers, reporting live, Eric Hong for the Weather Channel. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. And now, Jim.
All right, Alexander. Again, we continue to watch this very powerful hurricane, borderline Cat 3 major. We certainly look at it tonight from a satellite perspective, which you can see down in the corner there, and some of the pictures that we showed earlier when this thing moved off of the Yucatan. Oh boy, it's a whole different animal now. It looks very, very well structured, and certainly looks like it's going to pack more of a punch than it did or would have, if you will, if it stayed as a Category 1 or moved in as a Category 1 storm. Let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, of course, a lot of people watching you down here, and they want to find out about the wind and the waves. Let's break this down in two sections. First thing, the wind. What kind of wind do you think we're going to see in the Keys? Lower Keys up through the middle Keys?
Well, the worst conditions are probably going to be in Key West, and then they're going to diminish as you go up the Keys toward Miami or up toward the northeast. And the reason for that is look at this big trough of low pressure. That's what's catching the circulation and lifting it off toward the northeast. And when that happens, the thing that's happening right now is notice how this is coming south. That's keeping the system a little farther south than normal. See, it's just north of Cuba here and heading right toward South Florida. Now you say, well, so what? It's still not going to hit the Keys, right, Steve? Well, the answer is, well, the center may not hit the Keys, but the periphery of the circulation is so large that it's likely to have the southern eye wall right over the Keys. And look at this ugly looking thing. This is one of the ugliest looking hurricanes I've ever seen. Huge eye. This is about 60 miles in width. And so even though the center of the circulation may go well north of the Keys, look at this band. This is a southern eye wall, and this is the danger band down here, because this is the band that's moving in the same direction the hurricane is moving. And this is the band that's going to push all the water onshore. And that's moving right toward Key West. It's not very far away from Key West there. It's going to have to move well north the circulation center for that southern eye wall to miss Key West. Now, it may miss this upper Keys, but it's probably not going to miss Key West. So it's a very large circulation, and that's going to have some very profound impacts, not only over the southern Keys, but over all the southern and southeastern portions of the peninsula, all the way up to southern Fort Myers. You can see here's the eye wall here. And look at the extent of it. It comes way down here. This is Key West up here. So right now the southern eye wall is south of Key West, and it may come right over you. Right now the sustained winds are 37 miles per hour. Up the Keys where Jim is, it's a little less gusty, and the eye wall may miss him, but Key West may get right in the middle of it. So what does this mean for sure is it means that we're going to see some widespread power outages across South Florida, where that whole big circulation comes across basically from Naples southward through Key West over to Miami and Palm Beaches. Why do we think over here? Because fast-moving circulations carry their winds inland. The decay of a hurricane depends on how long it's over land, and if it's moving quickly, it's not over land very long. So this is the primary impact we're expecting right now, Jim.
Well, Steve, I heard you say the circulation may come over the Keys, which is kind of interesting. It certainly looks like from a jog or two from the satellite and radar that it's definitely trying to head this way. Let's talk about the waves a little bit. We've been south-southeast all day with the winds. You just showed the latest gusts. Where do you think the worst surge is going to be? Oceanside and Bayside, and what is that surge going to be?
Well, it's a tricky question because it depends on exactly where the hurricane goes, but let's look at it here. Right now, we think the center of the circulation is going to come somewhere in here near just south of Fort Myers down here between Cape Sable and Cape Coral. And so it's that right front quadrant that comes in. This is a very surge-prone area here, so we could get
12 to 15 feet of water in there on top of the wave action. Down here in the Keys, it's less surge prone, but we could still get 5 to 8 feet here. And out in Key West, if the right front quadrant hits you out there, it may be a little higher than 8 feet. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty in there. It depends exactly where that southern eye wall, that purple edge that I showed you, is going to make landfall. But right now we think it's going to be farther up the coast than the Keys, but still a lot of flooding. There's a lot of low-lying areas here. A lot of roads will be impassable during this circulation, Jim.
So, Dr. Lyons, if the storm does come a little bit farther south in the track, we won't see that 12 to 15 foot surge come down this way, correct?
If the hurricane goes farther down here, you will see a higher surge, but it will not be 12 to 15 feet. It'll be lower than that.
Okay.
This area is much more surge prone, and this is also where we get the high surf.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lyons. A lot of people hanging on your words tonight, buddy. We appreciate that. And we'll obviously talk to Dr. Steve as we go on through the night tonight, guys. So the Keys, again, mandatory evacuations are done. Right now they want you to hunker down, and there are places of last refuge, but do not use them unless you absolutely do not feel safe in your home. And as I mentioned earlier, if you live in a mobile home, you need to be seeking out one of those places of last refuge. And if you're watching the Weather Channel, you can see them right on the bottom part of the screen, along with the tornado warnings that may occasionally pop out. Alexander and Paul, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Great advice. Now, while we wait for Wilma's landfall again here in the U.S., residents in Mexico, well, they've begun the slow process of cleanup, and that one's going to be very difficult after Hurricane Wilma made landfall as a Category 4 and then just stayed there for 2 days with strong winds, waves, surge, and also feet of rain.
And William Lazuanis with Fox News reports now about all of that from Cancun.
As Hurricane Wilma went from a Category 2 to a Category 5, my recollection, in about 6 to 12 hours. It happened so rapidly, they didn't know where to put people. And by the time it became obvious of where it was going to make landfall, Cozumel and Cancun, the crowd at the airport was very crowded when we came in on Thursday, but for the majority, the vast majority, they were stuck here. They were moved, again, offshore, stuck in these schools and churches that are really the conditions compared to what they had were pretty miserable. So most people were simply stranded here, and they're dying to get out, as you might imagine, and they're dying to get information. Back to you.
All right, William, thank you very much. We'll take you now through the weekly planner. Of course, we are in storm alert, and we're going to talk about what this storm will do, and it will affect the Northeast as well. Tuesday and Wednesday in the Northeast, this is your day to be impacted by Wilma. More rain on saturated ground. We've talked about this. New York City and Philadelphia and Worcester all seeing record wettest October, so you can only imagine the ground saturation. Down trees, power lines, also possible. Tuesday to Wednesday, again, the timeline on this with rain and with wind as well. All right, let's start things off with tomorrow on Monday. Again, making landfall southwest Florida early tomorrow around rush hour, but then it quickly, at about 25 miles per hour, moves over the peninsula, exits back on the east coast, and then we're going to watch it begin to move. So it was so slow, and then it will move very fast. The eye was so little. Now the eye has become so big. So what a hurricane this has become. Again, Monday, all that wet weather as well. Rain showers in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Dry skies tomorrow on Monday. Tuesday, a few rain showers coming into the Intermountain West. Ample sunshine, though, for you in KC and St. Louis. Tuesday, the rain and the wind. What's going to happen with this? We're going to watch it almost become like a nor'easter and bring rain and wind to Boston and Providence and Provincetown and Dover, Delaware. That is Tuesday and that is Wednesday. Again, flooding will be the biggest concern there, and also some very strong gusty winds. So travel Tuesday and Wednesday in the Northeast out of all these hubs in Boston and Washington and New York. Certainly will be impacted. On Thursday, another system coming ashore in the west. You can see pushing inward on Friday. The northern upper Midwest looking fine. Chicago, Green Bay, all seeing dry skies Friday and Saturday, and really some beautiful conditions. Taking it to next weekend, which certainly seems like a long time from now, right? Rain showers, you can see that there through the Dakotas. A few rain showers pushing in toward the Red River Valley as we head towards Sunday. Another wet go of it on Sunday in the mid-Atlantic. In terms of temperatures, the story, the very cool air. Temperatures in the southeast about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than where we've been. So dramatic cool down for a lot of the country. Only real warm spot right here. You can see that. It's 80s and 90s. That's it in the southwest and the deserts. On Wednesday, 40s for high temperatures in upstate New York and down through Hagerstown, Maryland. On Thursday, 60s. You can see that. Dallas and Houston in the 70s only. So a lot of very cool air. Can't even see many 80s around the country. On Friday, you can see still quite cool along the northern tier of the country. Paul?
Well, as Hurricane Wilma moves closer and closer to the U.S., hurricane hunters continue their flights in and out of the storm. Now, earlier this afternoon, we talked to one lieutenant on the latest flight, actually our very own meteorologist Nicole Mitchell, on what it was like to fly into this system. Here's part of that interview with your Weather Today's Marshall Cease and Heather Tesh.
More intense and smaller. What kind of differences did you notice?
Well, it was some of my colleagues had flown it a couple days ago when it was so intense, and there we were so impressed because the eye was only a couple miles across. We only fly at 3 miles a minute, so you know, blink and you're through that
you have to take all the measurements.
Yeah, and you're doing the eye wall, the eye, the other eye wall, so doing all of that. But then the wind field with the storm was very small. Now, what's happened now that it's pulling off the coast, and even before that, we were watching the wind field definitely a lot larger than it was a couple days ago. And the eye wall itself was actually kind of going through kind of a replacement where we had actually 2 areas of eye wall, one that was about 20 miles across that was diminishing, and then another one that was replacing it at about 60 miles across. So that was something we're watching very closely during our flight through Wilma, and we were also noticing that those hurricane force winds, at least at our flight level of 10,000 feet, were extending in some cases out about 100 miles. So definitely a much wider storm, even though it's not quite as intense.
Was there any evidence of acceleration when you were there?
We were starting to, we were the first flight that after it was moving off the Cancun area, and just internally we kind of keep track from one fix of the center to the next, and definitely from just our own internal computations, each one it kind of sped up just a little bit, so it does look like, and of course we go through the NHC for all those official forecasts, but it does look like it is finally picking up a little bit more of that forward motion.
The process has begun.
And also, as you got close to Florida, what kind of surf were you able to notice from the plane?
Well, it's impressive because Wilma is on the southern side of the Gulf, and we couldn't even see the water. There's such a vast cloud shield with this. We couldn't see the water again from, on the way back we were flying at about 24,000 feet. All the way from that level, when we did finally see the water right outside of Florida, we could notice the waves and how much they were churning. And to be that high up and still be able to see the waves and know that it was kicked up from Wilma, definitely you can tell how much water that was pushing forward.
It's fascinating. There's been a lot of folks out there watching and saying, you know, I'd like to do that once anyway, just fly through the eye of a hurricane.
It is, but it's long. We flew from last evening, obviously, until this morning. And so it is a little bit on the grueling side, but definitely an experience.
Definitely. Thanks.
Okay, that was Marshall Cease, Heather Tesh, and our own in-house hurricane hunter, Nicole Mitchell, and also our other hurricane hunter, Warren Madden. He is scheduled to fly out there right now, so we could hear from him tomorrow.
All right, wonderful stuff. Well, stay with us for our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Wilma. Still to come, this water spout in Key West, and early sign Wilma is getting closer. What else is on the way tonight, we'll tell you.
And just take a look at the destruction left behind by the storm here in Mexico, and now Florida is in the path of this hurricane.
And I'm Jeff Morrow at South Beach, Miami, and this city is going to sleep with a windy night, but it's going to wake up with a hurricane. We'll have a live update coming up.
You're watching the Weather Channel, your hurricane authority. Coming up, the latest on Wilma. But right now, it's your local on the 8s.
Well, the destruction from Hurricane Wilma spreads to the island of Cuba. The outer band spun off a tornado, destroying at least 20 homes. Cuba has evacuated now more than 500,000 people to safer ground.
Meanwhile, tourists in the Florida Keys, well, they're taking advantage of their last chance to catch some sun. Wilma's strong winds extend out more than 200 miles and are sure to impact the barrier islands in the next several hours. And we are bringing you commercial-free storm alert coverage of Hurricane Wilma tonight.
Oh, and this is going to be a long night of watching and worrying for many homeowners in South Florida. And take a look at this. Images like these are one of the reasons why. Pretty scary, huh? Hurricane Wilma ripping across the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico over the past couple of days, destroying homes, thousands of home and resort areas as well.
And that damage done by a Category 4 hurricane. Now we're dealing with a Category 2 hurricane, but potentially could strengthen into a Category 3 before landfall. Winds at the highest of the Category 2 strength here, 110 miles per hour, moving rapidly to the northeast at 15 miles per hour, less than 160 miles west-southwest of Key West, Florida at this time. And it continues to have a pretty well-organized center here. The eye, we're talking 50, 60 miles across already. Can see some of the radar bands and the rain strafing parts of the southwestern parts of Florida. Even the Keys getting some scattered showers tonight, and the forecast continues to bring this storm on towards the southwest coast of Florida sometime Monday morning, and then rapidly pushing off across the peninsula by Monday evening. Also the northeast New England, watch out. You could also be feeling the impacts of Hurricane Wilma.
Well, of course, you are watching the Weather Channel, so we have team coverage to cover this storm from all angles. Our own storm tracker, Jim Cantori in the Florida Keys, Jeff Morrow tonight in South Beach in Miami, and Mike Bettis in Naples. And of course, here at Hurricane Central is our own hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, to keep us updated with the latest track on Hurricane Wilma.
And Hurricane Wilma could also impact the already storm-weary northeast. Our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes, will have the very latest on that side of the storm in just a few minutes.
But Paul, first let's go to the next danger area, and that is Key Largo and Jim Cantori. Just 20% of the residents evacuated in the Keys. Jim, any concern with the low number?
Absolutely, especially looking at the satellite picture for two reasons. A, it looks good from a meteorological perspective. Obviously, it doesn't look good for the Keys. And B, because of the fact that you've got this thing possibly jogging to the right, and as Dr. Lyons mentioned earlier, could come right over Key West. So that means they're going to be in the eye wall for probably the Key West area all the way up through the Middle Keys, and we may be just on the southern edge of that. So there should be a lot of concern in the Keys, no question about it. We could have storm surge as high as 10 feet and through here, and that's something we have not seen with previous storms, and I'll show you what those previous storms were in just a moment. Let's just show you what they were doing today here in Key Largo, and it was just kind of a regular Sunday. By talking to people, they're ready for this thing. They're just ready for it to be over with. I mean, this is a bunch who have been asked to tie down their boats now since Tuesday. Keeping them out of water is like, and that's almost a suffering that no one would want to go through if you love the water as much as these people down through here. But just a beautiful day. Obviously, the sun shined for a good part of the day. A good day for people to make last-minute preparations down in this neck of the woods, and they did that. They definitely did that, and now they're ready to deal with this storm tonight. We got a chance to talk to Mariana McGrew, who lives in this area that we shot the pictures, and this is what she had to say when we asked her if she was ready for Wilma.
Every storm has given us more reasons to be concerned. Last time we had water come up on the deck and lost a lot of trees, lost a lot of debris was brought by the storm. And this storm it may happen again, but we're ready.
And I think by looking at that picture from where that was shot, there could very well be some water certainly lapping up on her deck there on the ocean side before not too long, especially toward tomorrow morning. So, Mariana, if you're watching us tonight, be safe for that adorable family of yours. All right, let's talk about what we got here, what we've dealt with so far this season. It has been a busy one in the Keys. As a matter of fact, by the time Tuesday rolls around, that will be the 10th day off for most of the kids here, and that means they got to make up that time sometime. But it was Dennis, it was Katrina, and it was Rita. How close we came here in the Keys to having Rita bomb out and explode and become a Category 2. Almost a little bit too close for comfort. As a matter of fact, when Rita moved through, we had water up on this dock behind me here. And even though it was at the time of high tide, it certainly is of concern, especially given the fact that it was so far south and came in from the other side. Well, let's go to another place here that is definitely going to be hit with this thing. We're talking about the Naples area. Mike Bettis came in last night and has been there all day. Mike, you've obviously kind of gotten a feel of the situation there, and now your hood is up, so the weather looks like it's going downhill in Naples, correct?
Yeah, that it has, Jim. It began raining a short time ago, about 20 minutes ago, and we're looking for a fairly steady rain now to continue through the overnight. The winds have picked up as well. It's just the outer fringes of Wilma at this point, and as we go incrementally through the night, the wind will increase in intensity. The rain will increase in intensity. It is not going to be a pretty sight, we don't think, here in the Naples area, an area that just on a regular afternoon with a thunderstorm sees flooding through the streets. Now factor in a heavy rain-producing storm like Wilma. We can only imagine what could happen to this area. Obviously not a pretty scenario for us here, but despite the oncoming threats from Wilma, there were actually people out today enjoying the beaches, and some of them even with a little bit of a sense of humor. A lot of people actually have had t-shirts made up that have a satellite picture of Wilma on them, and then even the cartoon character, Wilma Flintstone, on those as well. But I think tonight a lot of those people have gotten off the beach, obviously, and they've made their way towards safe shelter and hunkered down tonight. We had an opportunity to catch up earlier today with folks from the Naples Police Department, got their thoughts on what people should be doing if they haven't evacuated tonight. Take a listen.
Well, if you haven't gotten out by now, make sure you buckle up, stay put, and, hope for the best, and hopefully the storm will pass us to the south or to the north, so we're not affected too much. But unfortunately, if you're in that evacuation zone and you haven't taken the precautions to leave, if something happens while the storm's here, we're not going to be able to get out to help you until the storm force winds die down.
So at this point, if you have not evacuated and you don't plan on evacuating, you're just going to hunker down where you are, stay put, don't try to drive at this point, and just wait for the storm to pass through. As far as the forecast, we all know what it is. It is getting quite bad as we go through the overnight into the day on Monday. Rain and wind tonight. Through the overnight, anticipating those winds coming up to hurricane force, that means at least 75 miles per hour plus, and at times we could have gusts higher than that. Power outages and downed trees will be problematic here in Southwest Florida. Through the day tomorrow, we will see our conditions improve, but in the morning, we'll be going through the worst of it. So you're going to really have to wait until later in the day or even Tuesday before you get out there and assess the damage and begin the cleanup. Curfew goes into effect tonight at 10 o'clock. We have 9 shelters open here in Collier County. At last check, we were told 4,000 people already holed up in those shelters. That is the latest now here from Naples. Let's work our way toward Miami, the big city of Miami, the biggest city in the path right now, we believe, of Wilma. Meteorologist Jeff Morrow is there. Jeff, what have conditions been like for you here in Miami through the evening?
I'll tell you what, I spent the better part of last week over around the Bonita Springs area, and we couldn't buy a breath of wind. It was so still and humid. And we get here to the East Coast, and boy, it's a different story. It's was breezy ever since we got here, and the wind, if anything, has picked up this evening, consistently gusting between 20 and 30 miles an hour. You can probably tell from the palm trees behind me. It's a little gusty out there. All right, let's show you some scenes from the beach that we saw when we first got here when the sun was still up. A lot of backloaders, if you will, kind of pulling some of the beach huts off of the beach, off of Miami Beach. A lot of folks kind of milling around, just kind of looking at the ocean as it was kicked up just a bit. Even a few brave souls trying to go out and do a little swimming here right before the hurricane came in. We talked to a lot of out-of-towners, including a couple on their honeymoon that were supposed to go out on a cruise that they booked last October. They're from Minnesota, and they're a little disappointed.
Well, we came down here. We actually booked a cruise back in October. And actually, it's my wife, Sherry. We're down here. It's actually our honeymoon cruise. So we booked this in advance. Just got married 2 months ago. So we came down to leave on a Carnival cruise, which isn't going to go out tomorrow. It's going to end up going out a day late. So as it is, we're going to sit and just kind of ride this out and try to make the best of it and have some fun. So, yeah, cool. So hopefully it doesn't get too bad. So if my parents are watching back home, my mom's probably going to freak.
Well, Mom and Dad, if you're watching from back home, they're doing okay, and they just have to ride out the storm here tomorrow like the rest of us. Let's show you a radar. Right now, Miami not really close to any of the precipitation. A few light showers tried to come up the coast, didn't quite make it up here, so we still have several dry hours, probably after midnight before the rain starts to, the outer bands start to come in. We are under a tornado watch, though, and particularly after we get after midnight, we're really going to have to watch the potential of severe weather. That's what's going on here, and as I toss back to Jim Cantori in Key Largo, Jim, looking at that satellite, boy, I'm not liking the way that thing's looking right now.
Probably in two respects, right, Jeff? The way it's jogging to the east and the way you're getting those colder cloud tops, the pink, if you will, kind of wrapping around the center. I mean, there's no question this thing is looking very, very well organized. You could not only see it on the satellite that we're showing you there, but also on the radar depiction as well. We saw that stuff coming at us. And Alexander and Paul, if you're back in the studio, check those obs out of Key West. I'd be interested to see what that last gust was with that little burst of thunderstorms that came overhead. But folks, the Keys have got to hunker down. We will be cut off from the mainland. There's no question in my mind down at mile marker 74, also at mile marker 110, which is to my north. These areas flooded during the storms that we dealt with earlier. We're talking about Dennis, we're talking about Katrina, we're talking about Rita. And for the most part, the effects here were complementary of a tropical storm. So now you're talking about a hurricane that is borderline Cat 3, almost a major, all right, that is going to come over Key West more than likely or be very, very close, which puts us in the quadrant of some of the worst weather with this storm. So not only are we going to have some of the highest surge, but we are also going to have more wind damage, we think, here with the Keys. Be real interested to see what happens to some of these boats before tomorrow afternoon. Alex, back to you.
All right, Jim, right now, Key West, sustained winds 43 miles per hour, gusting to 53. Yep.
Not surprised looking at that radar. So each one of those bands, folks, that comes in is going to produce stronger and stronger winds. And I would imagine by probably midnight, we're going to have a hurricane force gust there in Key West.
So, Jim, everyone hunkering down in the Keys, what are you going to do tonight to stay safe?
Alexander, we have quite a bunker here. I'll tell you that right now at this Marina del Mar. And this is completely concrete. It's 5 stories high. I mean, there's no way we could be in the surge zone. And even across the marina here, there's about a 25-foot high parking way that we can put our truck on, so in our vehicles. So we feel pretty comfortable about putting them there and obviously being out of harm's way. Let's put it this way. If we get 25-foot surge here in the Keys and Key Largo area, I need to find a new career.
No, you don't. No, you don't. All right, we love you. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you again next half hour. All right, for the latest on Wilma, more on the wind gusts and the rain, here's Paul.
Let's talk about the severe weather aspect. Anytime you have a hurricane or tropical system getting close to making landfall, the risk of tornadoes high. In fact, we do have a tornado watch in effect. This is through 11 a.m. local time, including the entire southern half, if not southern 2/3 of the state of Florida. Let's zoom on in, because we're concerned with one cell right here. This is crossing Interstate 95 here. This is Brevard County. A tornado warning for you through 9:45 local time. This cell has a history of producing tornadoes, at least 3 reports of a sighted tornado with this cell. And this is, as Dr. Forbes mentioned, our severe weather expert, just really one nasty supercell still riding right up Interstate 95 at this time. As we zoom back out, you can see, yes, this is the eye of Hurricane Wilma, already visible on the radar. In fact, again, let's show you the wider picture here, the viewpoint. Again, this is still a very strong hurricane, 110 miles per hour, could strengthen. And we're still watching Tropical Depression Alpha give some rain to parts of Hispaniola. But here it is, looking pretty well organized in terms of a broad eye and the strongest winds and a pretty broad core surrounding that eye. That's not good news as it approaches the Keys and South Florida. Again, the radar again shows the wind gust across the Keys, getting close to and into that hurricane force. Talking 43 mile per hour sustained wind at Key West this past hour. That is hurricane force winds and gusts into the low 50s. And in terms of the radius or radii of winds, they extend out about 200 miles from the center of the storm. So again, as this storm continues to approach, expect those winds to increase tonight and then continue as we head throughout the morning. And then again, as the storm makes landfall, we could see some of the hurricane force sustained winds as we head towards the very early morning hours of Monday.
Mandatory evacuations are currently underway for all Florida Key residents. I cannot emphasize enough to the folks that live in the Florida Keys, a hurricane is coming, and a hurricane's a hurricane, and it has deadly force winds. And while there have been evacuations over the last 14 months and there's not been a hit, perhaps people are saying, I'm gonna hunker down. They shouldn't do that. They should evacuate, and there's very little time left to do so.
Well, you can hear it in the voice of the governor, can't you? Hurricane Wilma, a serious threat to South Florida. Inland flooding, a major concern, and a tornado watch is in effect as well.
Let's go to our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes. And Greg, yeah, we were talking about some pretty vivid images of danger already across the Florida Keys.
That's right, Paul. We had one of those rain bands that went very close to Key West this afternoon, mid-afternoon, gave lightning right over Key West on the west side of the thunderstorm. It was a supercell thunderstorm. Look at the water spot that was produced. 2 or 3 miles farther to the east, that's massive destruction coming across Key West. That big wedge-type tornado, several hundred yards wide, racing north, just missing the Key West area. You're seeing the left edge of it. The right edge there is off the screen. Dangerous. This was a supercell thunderstorm. If it had come onshore, it would have definitely produced a lot of damage. Now let's take a look at SkyTracker radar and we'll see that these rain bands continue. Mostly right now they're offshore, but as Wilma continues off toward the northeast, we'll have that right front quadrant go across all the southern half of Florida. We already have a problem that's inland that Paul was just alluded to, and that's because there's an old frontal zone that's come south and gone stationary from Titusville down to Sarasota. The winds shift across that. The thunderstorms are allowing the rotation to concentrate in that, and a massive supercell thunderstorm running north right along I-95, right on the east edge of that near Cocoa, west of Rockledge towards Sharps, and the west side of Kennedy Space Center, the Titusville area, could be a tornado. There have been 3 sightings with that earlier. It's, of course, past dark now. Another strong storm north of the Lakeland area. Let's switch sources here. We'll see that now through really tomorrow afternoon, many of these same areas are going to have that threat of tornadoes, that concentrated corridor along that frontal zone, and then those rain bands on especially the right side, the south side of Wilma, push across the southern half of the Florida Peninsula now through tomorrow afternoon, Paul.
Well, Dr. Forbes, again, as this storm races past Florida across the east coast, just offshore, it has the potential to bring more rain back in the already waterlogged northeast and New England. Is there a serious flood concern there?
Well, fortunately, Wilma's going to move fast enough that it's not going to be a serious flood threat, but minor flooding and definitely street flooding are problems. Here, beginning with Florida, basically all of those areas that have the tornado threat, thunderstorms, heavy rain bands, 4 inches, perhaps 6 inches, some street flooding coming across there. But Wilma goes so fast, we may not get those foot or more type rains that sometimes we get. Then basically Monday evening through Wednesday morning, the west side of Wilma grazes, especially the southern and eastern parts of New England. 2 inches there, perhaps some local 3-inch locations. That should bring some of those rivers back up to just about flood stage, cause some local flooding, but not a major type disaster as we are seeing it right now, Paul.
All right, Greg, thank you very much. Well, as Hurricane Wilma comes ashore, you will see how the storm is impacting South Florida through the eyes of our team of meteorologists stationed around the area.
Mike Seidel has been in Key West for the past couple of days and has seen the residents and tourists there getting more and more concerned.
By late afternoon here in Key West, the first rain band, the far outer rain band of Wilma, arrived with some gusty winds, almost to hurricane force, 38 miles an hour at the airport in Key West, and a lot of rain, plenty of cloud to ground lightning. Some of these strikes coming down within just a few blocks of our location here on Duval Street. Last night, the street was pretty busy. A lot of locals, about 80% of